So what is the right way to describe uh, things as good or bad? Um, is the question. If you can't, if Because racist and anti-Semitic and sexist and homophobic and transphobic and this phobic and that phobic, they're all weapons that slander you as evil in order to invalidate you in areas even outside of the relevant context of the conversation. That makes them not useful. And language is about communication, useful communication. And so if something is a weapon and not uh, communication, then it's my misting system for my geckos. I'm going to change the time so it doesn't go off during the streams anymore, but I needed to make sure that it was working, so I needed to be awake. But it's not useful to use weapons as communication. Like imagine if you went up to somebody and you were like trying to understand them and find common ground, and they whooped out a weapon and whooped out like a gun and shot you. Okay, like that's what it is when you call someone anti-Semitic, or when you call somebody racist, or when you call somebody sexist, or when you call somebody homophobic. It doesn't matter. When you do that, you are harming them and using a term as a weapon. Now I understand like that there is, I don't want to say a tone, but there is obviously like some degree of a coherent narrative that is linked to these terms, but it's still not useful. And Jesse Lee Peterson said this perfectly. He said, there's no racism, there's no anti-Semitism, there's no sexism, there's just evil and good. And really, there's just goodness, but in relativity, constrained by entropy, there is good and evil, not just goodness. But in objectivity, there's just goodness, and there is nothing beyond goodness. But anything that is not goodness is just moving away from goodness and towards nothingness. So Jesse Lee Peterson is correct. There is only goodness and evil. And I thought more about this, and I was like, how do we make this into a quadratic structure that is primary and allows us to judge situations and actions without arbitrary nonsense terms? How do we bring moral judgment into objectivity so that we can have discussions with people who may have a perspective that is not good for them or others? And by the way, if something's not, what is good for everyone is good for everyone in the end. And it is our limited perspectives that makes us think that it's a dog eat dog rat race out there, but the theory of everything is a theory of growth. It is not a theory of conservation of energy. It's a theory of generation of energy, generation of information, not conservation of information, generation of information. And that is also the theory of generation of energy, and that is growth. So because of this, it's not that your gain is someone's loss or someone's loss is your gain. In objectivity, that's a relativistic perspective. It's not objectively true. Your gain is someone else's gain, and someone else's gain is your gain if it's true gain. But if you're talking about something that isn't actually based in true goodness, then yeah, you're going to observe that something that appears to be good for you is bad for someone else. If you end up, I don't know, cheating in an election or something, and or slandering somebody to get a job or get them fired so you can have their job, or anything. That is not good for you. It just seems like it. But who is to say that that thing that you're chasing is actually objectively good for you? Only God can decide what is objectively good for you, not you. So, but to chase anything that is objectively good will not result in a loss to someone else ever. So, that's important to remember. And so, what are the four primary moral judgments? They are good and evil, and kindness and cruelty. Okay? That's it. There's nothing else. There is no anti-Semitism, there is no racism, there is no sexism, there is no homophobia, there is no transphobia. If you want to actually solve the things that you're calling that, you have to stop saying those words. Morgan Freeman said this to Don Lemon many years ago on CNN, and he was correct. He said, Don Lemon said, do you believe that there's racism today that is holding black people back in America? And Morgan Freeman said, today, no. And he was like, look at where we are. And he was like, the irony is that the more we talk about it, the more it exists. And he's right. And that's true of all these things. So if you're sitting there and you're just ranting about racism, you're creating it. If you're sitting there and you're ranting about sexism, you're creating it. If you're sitting there and you're ranting about not Judaism, anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism, whatever you want to call it, anti-Jewishness, then you are creating it. And I'm watching people I know very well in politics fall into this trap right now, including people at my previous place of employment. And that's very unfortunate because I spoke to them about this and when I was there and when I went on Owen Benjamin's show. And I had said even before then, I was like, I don't think that we should be calling people anti-Semitic if we're also telling people that it's wrong to call people racist. And I just don't think it's helpful and it's not useful. So it's why are we communicating with messages that are not useful to communication? They're just weapons that we're using for political purposes. And there was this moment over the during COVID where the governor of New York or the mayor of New York, I forgot which one it was got on Twitter and he was like, to the Jews in Brooklyn, like, go, away from the synagogues and the parks and go into your houses, or else we're going to, like, have to call the cops on you, because they didn't care about the lockdowns and they were just still going to shul and school and weddings and playground and everything that when there was a lockdown going on in New York. And the mayor got on there and said this, and while I didn't agree with the lockdowns, it wasn't an anti-Semitic statement for the mayor to say. It wasn't even anti-Jewish. It wasn't like I said, I hate those terms, but it wasn't that. But I watched people on the right who I know, who have millions of followers on their profiles, millions, okay, get on there and say, oh, look who's anti-Semitic. And I saw Dave Rubin do it, and I saw DC Drano do it, and a bunch of other people who I can't remember exactly specifically who else it was, but I remember it was at least those two people. And I'm not going to say anybody else because I'm not sure, but I am sure about those two. And I messaged them, at least one of them, and I was privately, and I was like, I know you don't think that the mayor of New York hates Jews, and like, you're using that word as a political weapon, and we don't like when the other side of politics does this to us, and we shouldn't do it to them because it's not helpful and it's not true. And I was like, you don't have to answer me because I understand it's in text. Like, if you answer me, then you're admitting that you basically said something that was untrue. If you say you're right, but and they just said thanks, for the feedback, which is exactly what they should have said. And I was very kind, and I said it privately. And then they stopped speaking to me, and because of it, and even though I didn't see them do it again, that they didn't like to be criticized, I don't think. But they did take it well in the moment, or at least they responded well. But very diplomatically, very calculatively, I will say, which they should. I'm not the type to, ruin people, but, I understand if you have millions of followers, you need to be careful with your words. Especially, you need to be impeccable with your words. Always. This is true of everybody, especially if it's going to be saved onto the internet forever. And they were using, though, this word as a weapon. And I knew they didn't believe it because I know them personally. They're not stupid or ignorant. They were just doing it to have political points. And this is horrible. It's horrible when the left does it. They do it all the time. And it's horrible when the right does it. And they're doing it a lot more. And it's been a lot with... they're much more focused on anti-Semitism right now. In the past, it's been the left, and it alternates back and forth. Now the right is calling the left racist. And it's like, gosh, this is just not helpful at all. And it doesn't matter what is true and what narrative you think you can stitch together to fit that word. Like, we need to stop calling each other evil if we want to, like, find common ground. And we need a framework to do it, though. And you need a theory of everything in order to do it. And this is part of why sentient singularity theory is already closer than the CTMU to a theory of everything. Because it can explain how you can have conversations with people that say things that make you feel uncomfortable and make you feel slightly judged, while not totally invalidating them as a person to worthy of being included in society by calling them evil.